Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may happen to be, and whether you're watching live or archived. And welcome to episode number 50 of the Nautel Transmission Talk Tuesday webinar series. I did not design the cover screen, so don't blame me. We got a lot of stuff planned for today. We're going to have some fun, going to give out some prizes. People have been hitting us with the questions and comments early on already. And to bring that note in, if you are new to one of these, don't forget the housekeeping stuff. If you have a question, comment, criticism, concern, sarcasm, snark, or anything else to say, there's a question box. Feel free to type it in there, hit the enter button or the send button or other, and it'll pop up on my screen. No, Curtis, I do not have a party hat on. There are some things that nobody should ever have to see. That would be one of them. So there, the questions are coming in already. Elaine says, congrats, thanks very much. Brad said the same thing. And there was a comment from John about the VS firmware. John, we'll address that a little bit too, because why not? So also, we do try to make these, as I said, as interactive as possible. If you're not shy and you've got a microphone, feel free to click the little hand wavy button and we will open your mic up and make you part of the conversation. If you're an SBE member, this does qualify for half of a recertification credit under Schedule I of the SBE recertification schedule. So whatever you keep the notes on that, whether you do like I do, old school, scribble it down on a notepad, use an Excel spreadsheet, remember to jot it down somewhere. On that note, so we started these, I looked it up this morning, June 2nd of 2020. As we said in the press release, a way to keep me amused and out of trouble. And that's sort of kind of worked a little bit, mostly. Today's discussion is going to be a little bit all over the road. It's sort of a best of, a little bit of memories. We're going to, of course, do some tips and ideas. May be a war story, some prizes, definitely some shout outs to some of the folks that have stuck with us through almost all of these sessions. And but first, as I said, a word for our sponsor. We are really lucky in this company because we're currently owned, I think we're on our second owner in 52 years. This is me trying to do math in my head, which is never a good sign. And Kevin hired me 30 million years ago, 31 years ago, and he is the boss now, but he started in customer service. It's my pleasure to welcome Kevin Rogers. He's our president, our CEO, former customer service manager, field engineering tech. Kevin, thanks very much for being here.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. Pleasure to join you finally on one of these things after 50 of them.
Where did the year go? I was going to say, you would have thought we'd drag you in sooner, but you know how it is. We just try to do our thing and hope you don't notice.
No, it's I hear all about it. I hear all about it every week about the great stuff you're doing. So thanks for inviting me to the 50th. It's great.
So we've been here. I mean, you've been here longer than I have. You started as a field service engineer in the late 80s.
That is correct. 1985 I started and did, as you know, everything from answering the phone to troubleshooting in the field to customer training. So
just for grins and just to show off a little bit, I dug into our Salesforce database, which is our customer management system. And I printed 3 of Kevin's cases from the late 80s just because there's 2 reasons, just to show you that we do track all this stuff. So when you call us, somebody somewhere is taking notes, and eventually those notes end up somewhere where somebody like me can call them up. So be careful what you say. But yeah, so all the way back to the 80s and even today, like this morning, you sent me a note about a conversation we were having about Ifixit the other day.
Yeah, one of the engineers was having some problems with some corrosion, and I suggested a product that we had used back 20 some years ago, and it helped them out, so that was good.
So yeah, and I mean that's kind of cool. So left-hand side, we've got the original cast and our 3 founders, Dave, John, and Dennis, Dave, and John. I've got them in the wrong order, I know, but it's grown a lot since then. Yeah, because when you and I started, it was the office sales is in and the office that the engineering and cafeteria offices are in, and that was about the whole facility.
Yeah, so exactly. It started, there's been, I guess, four major expansions to the facility over the last 31 years that you've been there. And yeah, we keep growing and growing. So the building where actually your office, yeah, it looks like you were in the office today.
Nope, I'm in my
Oh,
home office.
all right,
I
well,
haven't had to be in the other office for quite a while now.
your work office is actually, yeah, in the original building, built in
Yes.
built in '69. That's right. Yeah.
Yep, and it's the funny thing is, in coming full circle, I am right across from the hall from the office I started in 1990. So
That's right.
yeah,
Exactly
you
right.
know what
The
can, and I
paneling,
mean,
the wood paneling is still there, but it looks very much like the background I'm looking at right now. That's why I thought.
yep. Oh, no, no, I made it a point. I painted this one to match.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or I've just been there too long. So, a quick question. I mean, obviously, in the past year and a half, we've seen a lot of really interesting changes. I know it's an ongoing battle with logistics and getting parts and stuff.
Hmm.
Looking at it from the top down, what are some of the challenges that you see that you have had to overcome?
Well, in the last year, I guess the last year, the big challenges have been sort of working our way through all of the regulations around who can come to work, who can't come to work, when you can come to work, masking, all of that stuff. Um,
Mhm.
but I think we've weathered the storm pretty well, and people have settled into a routine that works for them. And I think one of the things that we can look back on is how flexible we were with various people, and whatever worked for them, we made work for the company. So, like you
Yeah.
said, you haven't been into the office very much over the last year and a half. Some people prefer to be able to come in due to their whatever circumstances there are at home, but I'm sure that's very similar to a lot of the attendees on the call. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the William Harrison had asked in the advanced questions, and I'll give a shout out to William because I don't think William has missed a single one of these sessions.
Wow.
He's been here for all 50 of them. But he'd asked, what about supply chain delays, how they impact shipments and things like that?
So we are obviously like everybody. We live that like everybody is living it. I had somebody servicing the furnace in my house this morning, and he walked in the door and he said, "I apologize for the 3-month wait for this tiny little relay, but everybody's in the same boat." I said, "Yeah, I completely get it." So,
Yeah,
but as it relates to transmitters, we've got a team that's working on parts, on quick when necessary, quickly finding alternatives and approving alternatives. You can't. We don't just take an alternative without it being run through engineering to be validated. But all of that stuff is sort of has a very fast turnaround time because it's necessary. So we've
right.
stepped up the resources in that supply chain area to deal with
Right.
the current situation.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations too. You increase inventories, et cetera, and so on. And
Right,
it
we've done
was
that
just one
too.
of those. Yeah, and it's just one of those. This way it lets people know because this all. I mean, the asset tax and all that ultimately comes out of your pocket one way or the other. So there is a personal effect on each end.
Yeah.
Um, Now let's see. John or William had also asked if John Pinks was still around, and
Yeah.
so Ed has mentioned in the comments, and you'll meet Ed in a second too, Mr. Disembodied Voice himself. But Ed plays pickleball with John Pinks, and at 80 years old, he can still beat most people he plays against. So
Okay.
yeah, very much still around.
Yeah.
But Well, thanks very much for your time on that. I won't keep you any longer because I know you got a lot of stuff to do, and we've got a few more things to talk about. But yeah, it's been kind of fun. Even if it's only virtual, we don't get to chat that much.
Thanks, Jeff. Look, I appreciate it, and look, you're doing a great job with these. The feedback that I'm getting is just fantastic, and you guys enjoy the rest of the webinar today. Have have some fun.
Thanks very much.
See ya.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
and you all heard it right there, so next time I ask for a raise, we'll know where to go. But on that note, I do need to give a shout out to the marketing folks because they're the ones who make this all happen. And the funny thing about it, I say funny, they're all very much behind the scenes. I culled their Facebook profile pictures to get photos. Fiona and John, left side and right side of your screen, both kind of played prior commitments. I think they just didn't want to get, too much in front of the camera. Ed grumbled and growled, but he had to be here to make things work because if you leave me loose by myself, bad things are going to happen. So Mr. Disembodied Voice has hinted that he might turn on his camera for about a second and a half. So, Ed Sylvester, how are you doing?
And a second and a half is all you'll get, unfortunately, because I do have to make sure this thing works without crumbling to pieces. But how are you? How's it
Good,
going?
good. So 50 sessions. This has been a whole lot of fun. We've managed not to get in too much trouble, and we're both still employed. That's a good sign.
I'm very impressed that no one's come knocking on the door and said, you know what, you can't do this anymore because you're violating this, that, and the statute. But yeah, no, it's been a ton of fun, and it's been great getting to know you a little bit better as well through all 50 of these sessions. So it's kind of part of my week as it is so for so many of our attendees. So
All right.
it's a lot of
I
fun.
mean, this ranks right up there with watching the Packers beat the Bears, huh?
Thanks
Uh,
very much. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
so now we know who Ed roots for. On that note, oh, and Wilson has just typed in the chat or the question screen. Don't mention the Bears.
Yeah. Oh well, what are you gonna do?
There you go. So for the archive, tell John that William wants to take him back to the Micmac Tavern.
Good
But
enough. Will do. Will do.
on that note, thanks very much, Ed, and it's always a pleasure to work with you.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and enjoy the rest of the webinar, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right, so as I said, there are some prizes we're going to give away today. We've got a total of 3 Fluke AC1 volt alerts, and I'll tell you what we're going to do because we're, I don't know, frugal's the right word. Yeah, frugal's as good a word as any. What we're going to do is we'll order them direct off Amazon and have them shipped directly to you. So that way we don't need to go into a store. We don't need to buy anything. Everything's as socially distanced as it can possibly get. So we have a little wheel spinny thing. We've loaded everybody's name in here. Here's the kicker. You do need to be in attendance in this session to win, and I have the attendee list in front of me. Somebody said, well, some of our competitors pop in here now and again. What do you do if they win? I said, well, give them a prize because, hey, if they're here, why not? There'll be a grand prize draw at the very end, and we'll give you the winner, whoever that may be, the choice of whether they want one of these handy dandy little FLIR cameras, as you've seen several times. Mine's always with me, or an Atlas ESR meter, which is a really cool thing if you're into component level troubleshooting. So stay tuned, pay attention. We're going to do, I think, the first draw for the one of the Flukes right now. I'll spread them out through the session, but yep, there it is. So I will alt tab over to the handy dandy automated, and we've populated in all of your names, not necessarily in any specific order, and we'll spin the little wheel. Fortunately, I don't think you guys can hear the really annoying background sound that it makes. And today's winner for this, we'll take a look and see if Thomas Hurley's in the attendee list. And Thomas is not in the attendee list. So we'll close it just in case he shows up again. We'll do another spin. We'll see how many times I have to do this before we get somebody who's actually here. We're 70 plus attendees, so we're doing pretty well. All right, Mark Hill. And there, Mark's in the list. Okay, so Ed, you've got Mark's email in your registration. Jot him down. And Mark, you've just won a Fluke AC1 proximity voltage alert. We're going to close this. I'm going to leave everybody eligible for the main draw, but if your name comes up again for one of the other AC1s, we're going to assume that you would like to let somebody else have a chance. So in
And
the advance,
sorry,
yeah,
Jeff, just let me say that I will reach out to the winners via their email just to get their shipping details.
right. So whatever email you use to register for this, where you got your invite and your login, that's where you can look to see an email from Edward Sylvester at nautel.com. I think it's what, ed.sylvester?
That
That
is
was a
correct.
question. There you go. I'm going to say that was a question, Ed. So in the advanced questions, somebody asked what was my favorite part of all this. And there's been a couple of things, but one of my favorite parts is always the war stories sessions. And so I threw up the cover slide just as my placeholder for it. But one of our most frequent presenters in these, we've managed to grab Shane Toven from EMF several times, and I think Shane has actually made it in today again. Shane, are you here? Are you with us? Can you hear me?
I am. Good morning, Jeff,
There,
and
and
good morning, all of our our Transmission Talk Tuesday attendees.
so oh, you were in looks like Casa de Toven. You did not make it into the office.
I did not actually. I pulled out of my driveway, pulled to go. There's like always construction going on around here. I pulled out and went to go turn toward the only road that takes me toward work in any reasonable amount of time, and clogged solid. I'm like, okay,
Yep.
that's not happening.
There you go. Now you're pretty close to the office, aren't you? I mean, you're Antelope versus, yeah.
Normally on a good day, I'm about, 15, 20 minutes away, but with all this construction, not to mention the fact that I have an elementary school across the road from me. So if
There
it's
you
pick up or
go.
load it or a drop off time, oh, forget about it.
So, oh, and just a side note for Ed, Kevin Harris has mentioned in the comments that he's also a Bears fan. So the misery does love company. Shane, meanwhile, is married to a Vikings fan. So, we won't go too far down that road.
Well, and
I
now a 49ers fan if you're into baseball. So,
oh, there you
or I
go.
mean,
And
Giants fan. Sorry, I'm not a
sorry, I'm going to
go
say,
sports.
yeah, go sports ball. I thought the 49ers just kind of sort of played football, probably on the same level as the Vikings, but
No, her latest thing has definitely been the San Francisco Giants. So,
oh, cool. There you go. And I see Mike's in the audience, and I know Mike's a Vikings fan, and there's a few others. So I'll not talk too much trash on football at the moment. But we've had a lot of times over the years, months, sessions, et cetera, talking about some of the unique and interesting things we've encountered. And like I'm gonna shout out to somebody else. Let's see, neither of those are his pictures, but so vice grips as a connection device. You've run into it, I'm sure, more than once.
oh yeah, we see it all the time, whether on ground straps or whether coupling to an AM tower. It's surprising how often the vice grips become your your permanent solution.
Well,
Um,
and I've told this story here before, but my running joke is it's okay if I see vice grips holding the AM feed onto the tower on a temporary basis. If I come back 5 years later and they're still there, but now they're painted Dayglow orange, that's a bad sign.
there you go. Yeah, you might want to look at that and do something about that.
So somebody else I'm going to give a shout out to who is in the audience, and we'll call it the Three Musketeers getting back together again. And I say he's in the audience. I believe he is. Alex Hartman. Alex, are you here? I think if I'm not mistaken, that I heard you say something about using this to get out of a meeting. Scott, don't listen. Plug your ears, man. Plug your ears.
He's in another meeting. It's fine.
Oh, there you go. So, Alex, you and I have not only seen some of this stuff, but done some of this stuff. Oh, look, vice grips used to hold the spark gap on an AM
Was I
tower.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a running joke a while back of anybody know the current handling of a vice grip, whether it's the welding ones with the wide grip or the needle nose ones, asking for a friend.
Yeah, yeah. So Shane, one of the things that you do, which is kind of cool, I mean, Alex and you both traveled, but Alex more for his contract work in the local area to where he is. You cover pretty much the whole country, don't you now?
Yeah, Alex and I have known each other for quite some time. We're actually kind of the partners in crime, mad scientists, fellow mad scientists. But yeah, I've traveled much of the country in my new capacity with K11 Air One, and the K11 Air One sites generally are in pretty good shape, but the surroundings sometimes we don't have a lot of control over. So I see some things at sites that aren't always exactly what I would like to see, but
Right.
Like that.
yeah, like that.
Well, and
I think, is that one of mine?
I don't
Is that my
believe so.
jungle site?
It might be. I don't know. I
The
just
lower one is my
peop-
American Samoa site. Yeah, bring a machete.
people send me pictures. I post them.
And that was mowed last week,
Well, so the funny thing, I went to a site in might have been Missouri, might have been Arkansas, south central U.S. And I get there, and the pricker bushes are so high that we couldn't get the door open. And that's what he said. Yeah, he goes, we just bush hogged this last week, and I can almost believe it in some cases because that stuff can grow really, really fast.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
So Javad's asking if that site was still working, and I can answer the top one because I was at that site. I took that picture, and that one was very much on the air with an AM and two FM translators. That corroded looking box you see just to the left of the outhouse is one of the ISO couplers for one of the translators. So yeah, still working, and I'm pretty sure that American Samoa was on the air, right, Shane?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's nothing you can do to avoid that growing up. I mean, it's the jungle. I mean,
Right.
like I said, bring a machete.
Yep. And
And
I
it's a
mean,
heck of
yeah,
a trip up the hill to get to it. So
No kidding. Yeah.
I remember seeing
well,
the picture of the staircase you had to take,
Yeah.
or
At one
what
point, there
looked
was
like at one
actually,
point was a staircase.
well, at one point there was actually a tram that went up there as well, but as with many of those tram systems, it's long since out of service, for safety and various other reasons. But yeah, it's definitely quite a hike getting in there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
also
one of the
like Kirk Harnack had the video of him being in the helicopter because the clouds
Mhm.
come in so fast down there that you can easily end up having to spend the night on the mountain.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. And I know that I've talked to a few folks that have had that situation, not just in places like that, but you get up into Lookout Mountain in Colorado. I mean, there have been times when you get up the mountain and then all of a sudden you are not going down the mountain, not unless you brought a snowcat up with you.
Well,
And I mean, Shane, you've done Wyoming engineering, so we've talked about some of your interesting stories about getting to transmitter sites.
Yeah, one of the most interesting sites that I had was actually in Montana, where the site was built that such that it had a door down at ground level and a door like on an upper level with no stairs going to it from the outside. I'm like, but a landing. I'm like, the heck is that for? First time I went up there in the winter, I found out.
Yeah.
The snow level is at that landing. You come in and then you go down the stairs inside the building to get into the transmitter building.
hmm Yeah, Brad's checking in from Idaho. Helicopters not unheard of in extreme cases where the drifts are even too much for a snowcat.
Yep.
And yep, and so there's something else to think about. And this comes back to the drum we beat over and over and over and over about preventative maintenance. And keeping things in a condition where hopefully now stuff's still going to break. Stuff will always break, but you can really reduce the odds with some decent preventative maintenance. Because what's a helicopter lift cost? About a couple of $1,000 an hour, give or take.
About $5,000, give or take. I had to take one into a site in Idaho, actually. It's called War Eagle Mountain. There is no connectivity out there. And even when it's summertime, getting out there is like easily a couple-hour drive or more to get way out there. But yeah, that was the site. I also had to go 2 weeks in a row, believe it or not. That was an expensive week.
Yeah. So you just threw my famous theory out the door. If the donkey is walking, don't shove the stick in it. Okay. getting comments in the questions. But yeah, no, there's always been the argument that everything's working and you don't touch it, don't fix it if it ain't broke. But that is sometimes a dangerous viewpoint to take, right? I mean, Shane, you do, I know you guys do a lot of preventative maintenance
Yeah,
as opposed to reparative maintenance.
absolutely. I mean, ideally, somebody visits the site at least once a month. I mean, that's not always practical come wintertime, but when you do get a chance to visit before the winter sets in, you want to make sure everything is as buttoned up as it possibly can be. Do all of those maintenance items, you know, air filters, and make sure that things are secure and working well. Anything that you've kind of deferred maybe a little bit, yeah, make sure that's done before the winter sets in, or it's going to be a very long and expensive trip.
Yeah. And there's just a little side note because it crossed my field of view, but Sean Mattingly, who's attended a lot of these, had made a comment in the advanced questions about how to make a GV20 play a backup stream. I know I got a comment earlier that his intern Noah's here, so Noah got a shout out last week. Noah, thanks for coming back. And let Sean know that his question about the GV20 playing a backup stream will be the subject of a complete webinar in, I think we got it scheduled for about 3 or 4 weeks. In the next couple of days, you'll see Fiona releasing the schedule for the November webinars, and that was absolutely, we decided that configuring presets should be its own TTT session. I'll probably grab Alex for that just because it's a whole lot more fun when he does the work and I just talk. But that's how we roll. Now, we've done a lot of talking about snow and helicopters and stuff like that. And Shane, I think you might recognize this picture.
Yeah, you found another one of mine.
Oh, I know where this is going.
It's like I knew you were going to be here.
This was one of those sites that, you know, is really hard to access even in the summertime, let alone winter. In fact, this is the site that we had to take horses up to at one point. I think you may even have some pictures of that.
Thermopolis, yeah.
But yeah, Thermopolis. This particular site was one where this is the generator enclosure, and there's a louver there, obviously, you know, to let to let air in and out. Well, clearly the motors on this particular louver had failed and stuck at some point, and snow was just happily blowing right in there. And yeah, you see that on a trip, and it's like, oh, yeah.
And you had another picture you had sent me about one where the exhaust duct stuck open and blew the snow right into the tube transmitter's final.
Yeah, that was Rock Springs, Wyoming, and yeah, the building had been transported from one mountaintop to another apparently pretty quickly, and nothing was really secured very well. The hood on the outside for the exhaust duct had like fallen off at some point. So, and this is, you know, prior to my starting there. This was one of my first trips for that for Wyoming Public Radio. I go out there and it's like, that's not right. I go inside. The exhaust duct is secured straight to the top of the transmitter. Don't do that, by the way. And I opened the tube cavity and look, there's little flecks of snow in there. I'm like, oh, that can't be good. I opened the top, you know, little access hatch on the top for the exhaust, and it is just packed full of snow. You know, if you know the BE, you know that little tuning stub that sticks up out of the PA. It was just covered and packed full of snow. I mean, thankfully we were able to get that stuff out before it did too much damage to the transmitter. The power had tripped off, so, you know, but shockingly, you know, about a year later, I managed to bring it back to life. One tube socket later.
Well, then it's all a little bit at a time type stuff. Ray Lewis had said in the comments that we need to give you a full webinar on remote monitoring and control with your knock. And I mean, a lot of that, there's a limit to how much stuff you folks are willing to share on that, because it is pretty proprietary in a lot of ways. But I think we did do a remote monitoring session with either you or Jeremy about a year ago, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's certainly something that, you know, that we could certainly look at doing.
Oh, so, yeah, no. Yeah,
perfect time to plug the YouTube channel there. There's probably an archive somewhere. The internet doesn't forget.
Well, and that's absolutely true. All of the Transmission Talk Tuesdays are archived, and coincidentally, that was my next slide. Here are the sessions that we have done so far. Now, there's one in there that says TTT backup, and that was at a time when I had some very questionable internet situations at the house. So I threw together a backup slideshow that anybody could present just in case something went sideways while I was trying to do this.
I've got that
But
one several times.
yeah, more than once. And yeah, if you go way back over to the right, these are in reverse chronological order. I see site monitoring over there, and that might have been the one. I'd say I can't remember whether it was you or Jeremy, but
It may have
yeah,
been. Yeah, I mean,
it,
and in all honesty, I mean, on the engineering side of things, there's not a whole lot we do that's proprietary, and actually a lot that love to share with people.
cool.
It's just
So
on a lot bigger scale than most facilities are used to.
now, having said that, a lot of that can be trimmed down, and you are using SNMP for almost all of it too.
Absolutely, yeah, it scales really nicely. It doesn't
Right.
matter if you've got one station or 1,000. I mean, all of this stuff scales really, really well.
Cool. So there you go, folks. We will jot that down. Actually, I'm not going to jot it down. I'm going to rely on Mr. Disembodied Voice in the background. Edward, could you write that down for me? Another remote knock session with Shane and maybe even Jeremy. We'll get you both on. That'd be fun.
That'd be
Sure.
awesome.
So there, I've committed to it on recording. I haven't got a choice now. John mentions the old day were just dial-up, so things have come a long way. And he's not wrong. So shout out to John Van Milligan, who has also attended just about every one of these. And
Nothing like 50 ARC-16s trying to call you all in the middle of the night when something twitched all at once.
yeah.
I remember that when Shoreview did that once. You were working at NPR at that time, if I remember right, because my dad told me this story where everything went sideways there somehow, and everybody's remote control woke up the entire place.
Yeah.
And it was funny because there was actually a line to get in through the security gate, because it took them like an hour to get everybody in because there were so many engineers that had to show up to find out what went wrong.
Right. Yeah. And when something goes wrong at a combined site, you don't delay. You want to find out what's going on. It's a 10 station high power combiner.
Yeah. So on that note, I'm going to skip forward and we're going to go to the Wheel of Names again. I think that's actually the name of this website. Look at that, wheelofnames.com. And we'll click the little wheel and we will see who gets the next Fluke AC1 proximity detector. And we got Chris Hayes on the list. Now we scroll down, I see Chris is in the audience. So Chris, there you go, proximity voltage detector. Ed will reach out by email and we'll get that on the way to you. So this is probably the fun part of this session for me. I'm getting to give away Kevin's money. So we've talked about a lot of things, and somebody asked what my most memorable moment was, and it was probably this session here. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, because Ben and Greg have both been friends for a long time. They're both AM what's the word I'm looking for?
Enthusiast.
Cheerleaders. Thank you. And sadly, Greg passed away about 2 weeks after this session. So this recording it's kind of special to me in that regard. But yeah, we've been friends for a lot of years. And so that I think was probably, when you get right down to it, my favorite thing about these whole sessions has been this right here. These are the people who we've had on on these webinars since we started 50 sessions ago. And I mean, you'll recognize some faces. Up in the top right is my favorite Alex picture ever.
I see I escaped unscathed, mostly.
Mostly. Yeah, well, you and Jeremy pay some of my bills, so I got to be nice to you guys. Alex, not so much. But
We get to be the whipping boy.
yeah, so absolutely, it's just been a lot of fun. This industry has got so many great people that are so willing to share information and ideas, and it's just been astounding like that. So on that note, because I can, we are going to whip right into another prize draw. Like I said, this will be, I don't know, John's like, yeah, you can finish in 15 minutes if you want. And it's like, I've never finished anything in 15 minutes. So that is highly unlikely. Let's see. What do we got next? So this is our last Fluke AC one. And it's stopping on Christopher Jacques, who is in the list again. So there you go. That is our last Fluke voltmeter. So Christopher, Ed will reach out to you as well. William says, idea for webinar, best engineering gift ideas for the holidays. And that is probably a good segue into not this slide, but the next one. So we'll get to that. One of the other cool things that have happened as a result of this is this all started in our 50th anniversary year, 2019. Somebody dragged me up on stage at NAB like I have to be dragged up to put in front of a microphone anymore, and said, give us 50 tips for 50 years of Nautel. And so we did that, and that was cool. But now, as we've morphed into this Transmission Talk Tuesday, every Tuesday, Fiona puts a tip up on the on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you have. Might even be LinkedIn for all I know. And one of them was having a call out plan if you've got to be at the site alone. And of course, anybody who's listened, you've heard me beat the drum about having somebody go to the site with you. If at all possible, have somebody else there, even if they just know where the circuit breaker is to kill the power and know how to call 911, you know, when you do something stupid. And you notice I said when, not if, because we have all, I think, at some point or another done something that we look back and said, probably shouldn't have ought to done that.
There's a lot of things I've done only once.
Yeah, some things you only do get to do once. So Shane, going to put you on the spot here. What's your best shouldn't have ought to done that moment?
Oh my goodness. Before I do
Don't tell me there've been so many of them.
Speaking of call out plans, I just want to again make a quick mention about the spot devices. We use these across our network for all of our field engineers. A lot of sites you can't get cell service, so there are a couple of buttons on here. One is just to check in, say, yep, I'm here, everything's okay. The other one is I need assistance, which is, okay, I'm here, it's not an emergency, but maybe you should try to get a hold of me or get somebody out to me. The other one is, oh crap, I'm in real trouble, call out the cavalry, in which case, without any choice whatsoever by anybody else, they literally send like rescue helicopters or whatever to get to you. So anyway, yeah, spot devices. This one can do two-way text messaging. The others just like send out those alerts, and really a great little resource to have, and not super expensive either. So.
And that was going to be the question. So do they have a subscription base? I mean, I assume there's some airtime involved with them.
It is a subscription. Like I said, it's not horribly expensive. I can't give exact costs right now, but the devices and the plans are not super expensive, and they work pretty much anywhere. So since they're based on satellite, so they'll get your GPS fix, and then they'll shoot out a message to the satellite network, and off it goes.
Very cool. So that's a really good note, and that almost would fit into William's suggestion on talking about gift ideas for the holidays, and that may be a good session for December. Ed, yesterday we were talking about upcoming sessions, so if you could throw that in there, that'd be a cool idea. Poor Ed, Ed's really having to pay attention for this particular session. Usually he can just tune in, turn me on, go away and do his own thing and make sure he's back in time to close it all down when I finally stop talking. But he's getting all kinds of shout out time today. So anyway, we put this one up this morning about scheduling regular check-ins, and that's where the spot device would really come in handy. But Shane, now this is the point where I say, what was your best should not ought have done that moment?
Oh boy.
Yeah, well, you thought I was going to forget.
I would say my best shouldn't have ought have done that moment was probably vehicular and weather related. Wyoming and that whole Rocky Mountain region can tend to have some pretty severe weather in the wintertime, to the point where they close roads and you just can't get there from here. I will say this, maybe your commercial, your commercial general manager might have a different idea, but I come from a non-commercial background, and the philosophy is always radio is not worth your life. So if it looks like the weather is bad, and there's going to be some danger in terms of actually getting to the site, you might want to carefully consider whether or not you really can or should go to the site right that moment. Same applies to going overnight. But anyway, that actually, not following that little piece of advice actually cost me not one, but two vehicular incidents related to weather. So that was, both two vehicles totaled due to inclement weather, and probably going out when I probably shouldn't have. So.
Right. And I know as I've gotten older, and that I think the difference, they say with age comes wisdom. My all running joke was, if you do something and it worked the way you wanted it to, you gained wisdom. If you did something and it didn't work the way you wanted it to, you gained experience. So yeah, as I get older, the number of actual winter driving hours my vehicles get goes down pretty significantly, because I've discovered there are a lot of things I really don't need to do.
Yeah, my threshold has been ratcheted down considerably as well, in terms of, do I really need to make that trip right now? Yeah, probably not. Another few hours isn't going to kill anybody.
Right. And that's one of the things, and that leads into something that John mentioned here. And John, you've been on a whole bunch of these, just as the voice in the background, and I think occasionally we've had you open your mic. If you could just give me a yes or no on whether you've got a mic available, I might actually open the mic and let you address this one yourself. But there's been a whole lot of times, and one of the advanced questions was, are most of us now alone when we're on site at our transmitter sites? And so we got a comment when we posted today's link about how somebody's wife used to insist on going with them, and then until she happened to be there during a thunderstorm. And I'm here to tell you, a thunderstorm and a transmitter site, that's one place that I'd almost prefer not to be as well.
Yeah,
and they're done that story.
Yeah, nothing like when you're in the building when a direct strike hits. I've heard stories. I've never personally seen it, but I've heard stories about a plasma ball floating across the room when something like that happens. That would just freak me the heck out.
Or sticking your hands directly into the transmitter during an active lightning storm with an 1,100-foot lightning rod over your head.
Yep.
Right.
Been there, done that story too. Again, one of those things you only do once.
You learn about that. Now, I've got John unmuted because John mentioned that situations like this are one of those times for low power backups. And John, you've spent quite a few years doing stuff like this.
Yeah, it's probably about 50 or more. So I started when my dad was an engineer, so I helped him when I was a kid quite often. And so I can't remember when I started, maybe when I was 8 or 9, turning knobs for Dad when he was on the other end. So, but yeah. Anyway.
So John and I have got a running bet. I was telling Ed this before the session, and Ed, I think, got a little what's the word I'm looking for? Deer in the headlights looking. So you're retiring soon, right?
Well, yeah,
Sorta.
right now I'm
Retiring.
almost retired because I'm on family leave because my wife is going through cancer again. So
I'm sorry.
that's kind of I'm sticking my head in every now and then, but I'm almost out of the picture already and getting everybody else on staff used to me not being there. So quicker than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes those things have a schedule of their own. And we've got a running guess about when the VS beta will out. And it was going to be based on your original retirement date, which was end of this year, right?
Yep.
So I'm not going to tell you when the VS beta will be out, but I am going to give a plug to Barry Michigan's old radio, the BDR.net Thursday meeting. That's the day after tomorrow if you're keeping track on a calendar. And the session the day after tomorrow is with our Matt Herden, specifically talking about the VS AUI beta. So if you've got an interest, that would be the place to be. All right. Well, thanks, John. I just to say, I know you've been through almost all these sessions. I don't think you've missed more than one or two, so I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. And Alex, speaking of, I guess, dedicated, stubborn, foolish,
Certifiable.
pick
No
the
comment.
applicable.
Mm.
Pick the applicable adjective. You just accepted a new position in our facility, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, again, that thing you do only once. Yeah, and it didn't kill me yet. Yet.
Yet. So
Uh,
Alex has officially joined the mad scientist department.
yes, yes. My official new title, instead of customer service, which I still do at the end of the day to help the U.S. customers, since I'm in central Minnesota, central time zone. A lot of the guys are in Halifax, so I help out at the end of the day. But now my new official title is Digital Solutions Specialist. I think marketing would be very proud of that title. Is that now I deal with everything that creates a digital signal. Remember that thing on the back of your shirt says make digital broadcasting work? Yeah, no, that's me.
Yeah,
So
actually, I think
anything that makes that.
I
Yeah,
can't turn around far enough and still see myself. So there you go.
right.
But yep. So that's kind of awesome. So you are the guy that literally gets to answer the question on the screen.
Yep. So things HD radio nature, DRM, DAB, and it may be outside of broadcast, and other business units that we have. Anything that creates digital anything in that respect, I get to work on nowadays. So, design, develop, troubleshoot, diagnose, certifiably, all that kind of stuff in that realm with the new mad scientist team who sits in the background figuring out power supplies and capacitors and all these other things that go not supply chain issues like we brought up with Kevin. These are
Yep.
the guys in the back room who have to figure that stuff out. So I'm in that room now.
And the cool thing about it is, and it's funny, Mark's in the corner here because there's always the voice in the back saying, sounds like a made up title. It's like all the good titles are. It's
They
like, yeah,
usually are. I
yeah,
didn't pick it. They came up with it for me. They just like the way DSS rolled off their tongue.
there you go.
It's kind of like
DS.
senior broadcast engineer. It's what exactly does that mean?
Right. I
Well,
mean, my business card for myself still says mad scientist, and that's really what I go with.
yep, there you go. That's the way I like it. So we talked about a lot of things over the past 50 sessions, and of course, War Stories was a big one, but we spent a few sessions talking about what your favorite thing to have in the toolkit is. And I mean, this is one of my the shout out to the APRE, the Association of Public Radio Engineers, and this is one of the giveaways that we sponsored at the Public Radio Engineering Conference in Vegas last time. I think that we actually had a live conference. Shane's looking for his right now, I can tell.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
looking for my must-have, but I can't find it, so it must have been confiscated by the TSA.
oh, one
My
of those
bag's in the truck.
little
So.
credit card multi-tool things.
No, I actually do have that. I actually do carry that and one of those little tools on a key kind of things with
Oh, yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
screwdriver and all that fun stuff. But the one that I almost always carry with me is one of these Klein 11-in-1 drivers. That thing has saved my butt more times than I can count.
So our navigation team, let's get over, I got to get the right
Oh,
camera, have these little guys here.
okay, I
And
have one of those.
I think the lights, oh no, the light still works on this one. Look at that, boy. Don't let anybody know I have actually got a working tool. But yeah, it's one of these multiple screwdriver sets with different bits. So that's great for board work, less so if you want to work on a chassis. But for a lot of what we do nowadays, the small tools are usually enough.
Well, how many times have I gone out to a site and realized, oh, I can't take this thing out of the rack because I don't have a screwdriver with me. Or somebody put a security screw in here. I can't
Yeah,
get this thing out of the rack.
right.
My favorite
So
are Allen keys. No one ever remembers to put that in your bag until the first time you don't, and you're like, oh, now that's going to take up some space.
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things. And of course, you can see on my tool bag there to the right side, I've got my little proximity volt tester, which was a BGS giveaway at some trade show or other, Broadcasters General Store. So look, Alex has got the same one. Yep, right down to the label. So,
Yep.
you know, those are, again, I'd say we've given away a couple already. Elaine says that she's counted up to 17 greeneries in her office. Brad says that
That's where they all went. They're with my 10 millimeters. I know it.
yeah, or my half-inch wrenches, my half-inch
Mhm.
open-end wrenches that I can never find.
7/16 seem to run away if you have a lot of satellites.
So Brad mentions that the Klein 6-in-1 stubby driver is the perfect companion for the 11-in-1 full size.
Agreed.
So, and that is another thing that's really worth mentioning. One of the best tools I've got is one of the offset screwdrivers. Oh, there, Alex has got another one of those two-way
The one
screwdrivers
that
for
looks,
little
no, it's the
giveaways.
one that looks, it's actually a 4-in-1 and it looks like a pen.
Yeah, yep.
So these little micro drivers, the problem is the bases get a little too wide too quickly. So you have to get those deep ones, you need the real ones.
So one of the other things that I like to keep on hand is for smaller stuff, you know, for more detailed work. There's a company called Ifixit. They make some really cool toolkits that have got things like spudgers for cracking open chassis and, you know, all kinds of fun little stuff, all the bits that you could ever possibly need.
So, and I assume their website is ifixit.com, ifixit.com.
Don't remember what their
Yeah,
website is.
that is correct.
it?
And
Okay.
I have 3 of their kits, and dear God, are they expensive, but worth every penny. Uh,
Agreed.
the nice thing about those kits and the website in general, they're more consumer electronic focused, you know, taking apart your phone or TV or, you know, PlayStation, whatever.
Mhm.
But they give you ideas when you're staring down something you have never had to deal with before of how to use a spudger. How many people have actually used guitar picks to wedge things apart, you know, without scratching things up?
Yep.
Or, you know, grabbing the heat gun to remove the void label, you know, which I'm
Alex
pretty
likes
good at.
fun.
So, so somebody who looks a little too much like me may or may not have a box full of Lego brick tools upstairs. And if you take the Lego brick tool and run the wedge end through a grinder, it makes a really great little spudger for, you know, pulling stuff apart.
But
Andrew mentions that the iFixit Mako kit is great.
mhm.
Um, let's see, 100% iFixit. The big kits are great from Duncan. Let's see if you
Magnetic
weren't.
parts tray is the best thing ever for those who use, you know, Ferris screws, because it comes on that kit's lid. You just throw it over and
Yeah,
put all, and they've got little square grids so you can keep track of where they came from.
right.
Absolutely.
Now, Brian mentions that if you weren't lucky enough to get one of the Broadcasters General Store non-contact voltage detectors, that Harbor Freight has a $6 or so one.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And again, I mean, you know, it's Harbor Freight, but for a non-contact voltage meter, as long as you don't leave the battery in it for, you know, and you remember we talked about this a little while ago on the Gizmos and Gadgets. It might only have been last week, yeah, with Tom. And I said that the thing about a non-contact voltage alert is that you need to test it on an online circuit. You need to know that the battery's good for one and that it still works. Um, and that's an argument. One of the habits I've gotten into is I have just a little Ziploc baggie that's tie wrapped to my voltage tester, and I pull the battery out of it and keep it in the baggie when I'm not using the thing. And that way you don't have to worry about it corroding in there.
I had
Um,
a case not too long ago where I was doing some studio work of all things,
mhm,
and they were having a lot of issues with you know, the 60 cycle hum getting into everything, and this studio was just recently converted to audio over IP.
right.
And so I went in and I was like, so why is the, okay, so let's test a couple things here, because 60 cycle hum comes from the power lines, and I just had an electrician in, replaced the whole place, put all this stuff, and I grabbed this little doohicker here and I stuck it to the faceplate of the AOIP engine, and it beeped
Mhm.
at me. I
Ouch.
had high voltage going through the rack because ground and neutral were touching, and
Ouch.
somewhere along the lines
Whoops.
they crossed not neutral and hot. So I had
Yep.
60 volts going through the rack.
I've had that experience as well. It's an unpleasant surprise when that happens.
Yeah. And the way I found out was the on-air light relay smoked instantly as soon as I touched the GPIO pin. I'm like, why would that happen? So I sent 60 volts through it. What should have been a dry contact, and here's the misery right there. But things like that. But I would say my most important tool to have, believe it or not, surprisingly, I've been bit by this. Again, it was one of those things I had to learn a couple of times to figure out what was wrong. I personally have pretty sweaty hands, oily skin, whatever. So my most important tool, isopropyl.
Yep.
Because when like old tube transmitters and stuff like that, you leave a fingerprint on the tube, you just created a hot spot, and you're going to have a problem. Solid state finger contacts on power supplies, clean them off. Edge connectors of any of the NV-GV transmitters, every time you take them out, wipe them down.
So
I go through in gallons.
Yeah, I actually just ran across this actually. I'd always heard that, you should wear cotton gloves while handling transmission line, especially the inners of transmission line and bullets and things like that. Never really paid too much attention to it. I'm like, how bad can it be, right? Well, recently at one site, and Jeff, I think I sent you a picture of this. You probably don't have it ready, but I sent you a picture where I took, we were doing some replumbing to install a combiner.
Yeah.
And, the tech took the bullet out of the top of the transmitter, looked at it, and the top part was discolored. I'm like, oh, that's not good. I mean, it wasn't carbon. It wasn't like it was arcing, but you could tell there'd been some heat there. I mean, Fortunately on the Nautels, they slip into a big brass, cup at the top. So there was, the heat was, probably dissipated pretty well, but still you don't want heat in your, in your transmission line joints. So Alex, the isopropyl is a great answer. And one thing I'll caution though is you want to double check and make sure there aren't any additives in it.
Right, you gotta I don't do anything less than the 91, the stuff that evaporates if you open it. If you use the more like 70 stuff, you end up with more water in it than it's not distilled water. It has a lot of impurities.
Costco, you can buy the 4-pack at 99%. So that's what we keep in the medicine cabinet. Let's see, Curtis made a good comment that it's also a great way to help get over bug bites and relieve itchiness. Just a little dab isopropyl on a bug bite will help you out a little bit. I know some folks have got to leave at the top of the hour and we still haven't done the grand prize draw. So I'm going to flip over and do that real quick, and then we'll chatter amongst ourselves for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. But so grand prize, and whoever gets this one, it'll reach out by email and ask you whether you want the ESR meter or the infrared camera attachment, either iOS or Android, your choice. And the winner is I can't do a drum roll.
So nice.
Okay, Gary Mantufel is disqualified from winning because employees don't count. So sorry, Gary, if you're listening, you're not getting the toy. Alex is disqualified for the same reason, but I think he's on as a panelist. And we got, flicked over Len Watson. Let's see if Len's on the list. Oops, scrolling up. LM, it would help if I could tell. I do not see Len on there. We're going to try this one more time. Somebody's doing a mental drum roll. All right, by Elaine. So, okay, down, see if Roger's here. No Roger. Boy, I can't give this thing away for love nor money. Pretty soon, I'm just going to give it to Shane, and we'll call it good. Let's see where we end up here.
Andrea will steal it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. And clicks over to Brad, and I know Brad was here earlier because he's made several comments. So let's click up here a little bit. Brad is still here. Brad, woohoo, is right into the comment period. So Ed will be reaching out to you, Brad, and there you go. Now, you know where I'm going with this. I'm going to tell you flat out, you need to get you one of these. But having said that, if you don't want one of those, ESR meter, if you do any amount of component level troubleshooting, those are a slick little toy.
Great.
And this particular one was recommended by an engineer friend, so it's should be a pretty good one. So congratulations to Brad. And let's see if I can figure out how to get back to, look at that. So one of the other things, let's see, Elaine mentions here, if you're in a large enough city to have an art supply store, they also sell thin cotton gloves that will still permit dexterity. And that's the thing with the cotton gloves, you got to have the tight fitting ones.
Yeah, the white, the proverbial white glove install gloves, you know, the Mickey Mouse gloves, as people call them sometimes, because they're pleated on the back to get it tighter. You can order those on Amazon in like a 10 pack, and I do that for installs, like Shane had mentioned, for the exact reason of feed line. When you're cutting hard line, you're working with the inner separate from the outer, and again, in conjunction with the alcohol and a soft cloth to wipe everything down, get all your shavings out, but also to take the oils and fingerprints off on all your mating connections to make sure it's nice and clean. It'll stay that way until Thor decides otherwise.
Right. And now one other note there, I will mention the suggestion, and he made the comment here. So yes, credit where credit is due. Eric Schechter from the West Coast is the one that recommended the ESR meter to us. So Eric,
Hi,
thanks for that. And it is very much a great tool if you're doing any amount of troubleshooting. So
Mhm.
let's see, what do we got? We're at 2:02. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I am going to do the finalizing stuff just while I'm thinking about it now. But as always, this webinar with all Nautel webinars is archived for posterity, and so somebody can get back to me and say, "See, I told you you said this," and you know, hold me to accountability and all that great stuff. We've also got the Waves newsletter and the YouTube channel. Alex had mentioned that earlier. We put a lot of support videos on the YouTube channel. You can find all of the TTT sessions on there. Everything that we do online in a video format pretty much is archived on that YouTube channel. Again, saved for posterity so somebody can go back and say, see, I told you you said this. Online info like the broadcaster's desktop resource. And I mentioned Barry's session on Thursday. If you've got an interest in the non-flash AUI, you're definitely going to want to sign on for that, if for no other reason than to give Matt a hard time and tell him, but Jeff said that
And
you
do
had
that
signed
now
up for
because it is an invite thing too, so Barry can
it. Right.
send you the link. So make sure if you don't wait till Thursday to jump in. You got to do that today or tomorrow,
Right.
so you can get to you.
So by all means, go to the bdr.net, sign up for that thing so you get the invite for it. The other thing to mention is that we just did a press release about virtual factory acceptance testing. Now, here in North America, if you're not working with big non-commercial groups, it's probably less of a thing. But factory acceptance testing is when you come to the factory, watch us do the final proofs of performance and testing of your specific transmitter or transmitters. And then you sign off, say, yeah, this looks like it's doing exactly what we want it to do. And then we ship the thing. And then you send us a lot of money. I may have the sequence a little bit backwards on that. Hey, I don't work in accounting, I work in sales. But we are now offering the ability to do that fully virtually with a big old array of cameras and electronic doohickeys and all kinds of cool things. And there is a little video up about it. So it is kind of cool in that regard. And yeah, it does come with a cost because it involves time and materials. So, you know, we don't do this stuff. We love y'all, but we don't do this stuff for free. And it's definitely, though, it may be something worth checking out. So Shane, I'm going to put
Yes,
you
sir.
on the spot. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to put you on the spot one last time. I've told my shouldn't ought to done that story a million times, but I always tell the one about working when I'm overtired. And as I get older, I get more conscious of that. But when I was younger, I was not so conscious of that. And it'd be nothing to get off an airplane after traveling for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours and go to a transmitter site and then work 12, 14 hours and think that you're still semi-coherent. And I'm here to tell you that, Alex, yeah?
Or out of an 8-hour car trip, because the wife may not agree, but you know what? Driving 8 hours is exhausting.
Right. And so the thing to pay attention to is more, I tell folks, I look at the clock for all of this stuff. because there'll be times when I feel wide awake and ready to roll, but that's a lot of times in my case caffeine and adrenaline flowing, and not a lot of common sense. And I don't claim to have a great supply of that particular thing at the best of times.
It's pretty
But
rare these days anyway.
yeah, as my wife says, it's not a flower that grows in everyone's garden. So Shane, what do you do? Because again, I know you do a lot of air travel. Do you have a system or a schedule where you just say, look, I've been moving or awake for 16, 18, 20 hours, whatever, I'm done?
So a couple of things. First, I always try to, load my travel such that I'm never hitting the ground running as just right after I've landed. I want to make sure that I'm nice, well rested, and that I can kind of hit the ground with a clean head and, make sure that I've actually got some rest in. Yeah, you still have to deal with jet lag on one end of the trip or the other. But the other thing, and this is something that applies regardless of whether or not you're traveling, is stay hydrated. It is so easy to forget about that in the midst of everything, and you realize before you know it, you start to get a headache. It's like you just don't feel quite right, and chances are you're dehydrated. So stay
And that's
hydrated.
even worse if you're flying, because I swear airplanes run at about 5% humidity.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, they tend to reduce the oxygen just a hair as you're in the air there.
Yep.
So,
So Alex, the one thing that we didn't get, I don't think we got your example of should not oughta really kind of done that. What's your big one?
So they always, it's an interesting lesson you learn early on in an engineer's career. And this was one of the first things I learned 20 some years ago, was just because someone said they did it doesn't mean it's true.
yeah.
Especially if there are others around, like their supervisors. Of course I did that.
Mm-hmm.
As I love, as I've commonly referred to it, it's called Ronald Reagan, the stuff, right? So you trust but verify.
Yeah.
I've got the vampire bite on my arm still from laying my arm across an ammeter in a tube transmitter, because I was there with the chief engineer who was training me when I first started in radio. And he said, yeah, okay, just grab the paper towels and then the rag, and we'll wipe down all the dust outside, and you just fold down the meter panel. And he says it's interlocked. It will turn off all the meters as soon as you drop this down. Yeah, sure it did. So you lay your arm, and in the tube transmitters of that vintage, the ammeter is actually recessed, so it sits higher than the rest of the metering panel. So as you're wiping it out, right there, nothing says fun like laying 7,400 volts at 1.3 amps across an ammeter, and we'll throw against the wall. And again, it's one of those things, if you're lucky enough to walk away from, like I did, you question what was just happened and why you're still doing this.
Yeah.
But that is one of those things where it's trust but verify, because everybody knows that you walk into a site you don't control and have not controlled since day one, you do not know the history of it.
Yep.
Even if you do control it, you don't guarantee that bleeder resistor didn't blow since the last time you used it, or in our case, the B plus discharge. So yeah,
or a loose
AC,
copper bolt from the Jesus stick.
yeah,
We always
AC
love the
off.
Jesus stick.
Yeah.
Say AC off, then I measure it, then I short it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I was just on another webinar recently that I said something very similar. Is never assume. Never assume.
Yep.
Always check.
Make sure you can go home at the end of the day. That's all that matters. Like Shane said, is a little bit of a snow delay worth your life? Just the same, if it's a clear, beautiful day and you're working on this equipment, it's not worth your life. Be safe about it.
Or if you're tired, or yeah.
Yep.
And I told somebody, it's not that you need to be scared of it at all, but you do have to have respect. Yes.
As I tell all of my student engineers at the university, the second you stop respecting this equipment, it has no reservations about trying to kill you.
Right. Yep. Oh, it always had that plan, but I mean, as much as any piece of equipment can have sentience. On that note, we have hit 10 after the top of the hour. John mentions he had a big arc to the shorting stick, which trips a breaker because breakers aren't always labeled correctly. And that's true too. You'll shut a breaker off that says transmitter and discover somebody at some point put the transmitter on a different breaker. Brad says that not only will it kill you, it'll hurt the whole time you're dying. And
Yeah.
the only good thing about 30,000+ volts is that's a short time.
Show of hands for the
sure.
Wilkinson transmitters. Anybody remember those?
So on that note, we have hit 10 minutes past, which is about our usual quit time. Alex, Shane, I especially want to thank you two, along with our regular attendees, but definitely everybody. I mean, you know, it's the folks who keep signing up for these things every week that make them worth doing. So by all means, I know, like I said, in the advanced questions, Sean and Noah, give them that shout out again, that Sean had put a suggestion in here that will become a webinar in the next couple of weeks. So definitely hit me with those. There's one or two other things in here that we're going to address as well. But yeah, thanks very much for being here, both Shane Tobin with EMF and Alex now in the Mad Scientist Division at Nautel. So thank you.
Thanks,
and
Jeff.
folks, have a great night. We'll see you next time. Great day, whichever it happens to be. Bye now.